Yeah, I wasn't ashamed. I just didn't look at myself as anything fancy or fabulous or...
At 79, Goldie Hawn has nothing left to hide, nothing left to prove, and absolutely no fear of telling the truth that once kept Hollywood whispering for decades. Behind the sunshine smile, the comic timing, and the eternal America's sweetheart image was a woman who lived boldly, loved fiercely, and broke more rules than the industry ever suspected. So when she finally revealed the 7 legendary actors she once slept with, the world didn't just gasp, it stopped. Because these weren't random encounters. These were icons, men whose names shaped Hollywood itself. And the man at the very bottom of her reversed list was perhaps the most surprising of all. A golden boy with a polished image who hid far more heat than anyone imagined. Goldie's revelations begin with a shocker. The unexpected, unforgettable Robert Redford. Robert Redford was the last man anyone expected to appear on Goldie Hawn's secret list. But he was the one who shook her the most. Goldie had spent her entire career around handsome actors. But Redford was on another level. Controlled, intelligent, impossibly charming without even trying. When they met in Aspen in 1987, she wasn't greeted by the Hollywood golden boy the world was obsessed with. She was greeted by a man whose voice was soft but direct, whose eyes held entire conversations, and whose presence radiated a subtle, simmering heat. Redford didn't flirt, he invited, he didn't chase, he allowed, and that was precisely what made him irresistible. Goldie described their chemistry as a surprise attack, the kind that creeps up slowly, quietly, then overwhelms you in a single moment. One evening conversation in a dimly lit cabin turned into a night she would remember for decades. Goldie said, "Redford made love like a director, attentive, intentional, always in control of the moment." The affair didn't last long, but its impact did. Redford showed Goldie a different kind of passion, refined, calculated, deeply intimate. But the next man in her story wasn't refined at all. He was pure danger wrapped in good looks. Don Johnson. If Robert Redford was a quiet storm, Don Johnson was a wildfire. Goldie Hawn met him in 1985, when his Miami Vice fame had turned him into one of the most desirable men in America. Don carried the kind of reckless confidence only a man at the peak of his beauty could possess. Dangerous, intoxicating, and thrilling in every direction. Goldie always said that Don didn't flirt like normal men. He performed desire. He turned every touch, every glance, every whisper into a stage. His charm was quick, sharp, and dripping with mischief. The moment they met, the air between them tightened like a wire ready to snap. Their first night together was legendary in Hollywood gossip circles. Goldie called it a masterclass in creativity, admitting that Don approached intimacy like an artist with something to prove. Nothing was routine. Nothing was predictable. Don Johnson lived for pleasure, and he shared it without hesitation. But his wildness came at a cost. Don's cocaine use, late-night chaos, and emotional volatility created a darkness Goldie refused to get swallowed by. So she walked away, not because the passion faded, but because she valued her sanity. And then came a man whose intensity went even deeper. Al Pacino. Al Pacino was unlike any man Goldie Hawn had ever met. There was no charm offensive, no exaggerated masculinity, no Hollywood glitter. Pacino seduced with honesty, raw, unfiltered, disarming honesty. When they met in the late 70s at a private gathering in the Hollywood Hills, Pacino didn't praise her beauty or her fame. He asked about her fears, her failures, and her dreams. Conversation with Pacino was foreplay. Deep, intellectual, soul-level foreplay. Goldie said she felt seen to the bone, something both thrilling and terrifying And when conversation finally gave way to touch, the intensity was overwhelming. She described being with Pacino as standing too close to a fire, beautiful, but dangerous. Pacino didn't hold back emotion. He didn't pretend to be stable. He didn't hide his chaos. And Goldie, who had always been drawn to passionate men, found the experience addictive, but addictive doesn't mean sustainable. His intensity burned bright. Too bright. It consumed the space around him. Goldie realized staying meant losing pieces of herself. Leaving meant saving what was left. But before Pacino, there was one man who opened Goldie's world in a completely different way. Burt Reynolds. Goldie Hawn often said that Burt Reynolds was the first man who made her feel powerful in her own sensuality. When they met in 1976, Burt was already the hottest box office star in America. Mustachioed, magnetic, every inch the swaggering hero women adored. But with Goldie, Burt dropped the showmanship. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room. He didn't chase, he invited. And Goldie responded to that quiet confidence with an intensity she didn't know she possessed. Their first night together lasted until sunrise, a memory Goldie described as transformative. Burt didn't shame desire, didn't soften it, didn't handle it delicately. He celebrated it. He encouraged Goldie to explore parts of herself she had never allowed into the light. With Burt, intimacy was not just physical, it was liberating. But both were at the heights of their careers, constantly traveling, constantly overwhelmed. Their schedules, not their passion, ended the affair. And before Burt, there was a man who nearly consumed Goldie entirely, Ryan O'Neal. Ryan O'Neal entered Goldie Hawn's life at a moment when she was vulnerable, newly famous, and unsure of the world. He approached her not with charm, but with brutal honesty about his desire. Ryan didn't flirt. He attacked, emotionally and physically, with a fierceness that caught Goldie off guard. Their relationship, beginning in 1974, lasted nearly 2 years and was described by insiders as volcanic. They loved hard, fought hard, and collided like two storms crashing into each other. Ryan's jealousy was legendary. His possessiveness was overwhelming. At times, he tried to shape Goldie into what he wanted rather than who she was, and Goldie, drawn to passion, lost herself in him. She admitted later that Ryan was the only man she ever considered giving up her career for. But she also knew he was the only man capable of destroying her spirit. Leaving him wasn't easy, but staying would have broken her. And before Ryan came the wildest of them all, Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson didn't seduce Goldie Hawn. He overwhelmed her. Their affair began in 1973 during a series of infamous parties hosted by producer Robert Evans. The moment their eyes met, the energy shifted. Jack didn't hide his interest. He radiated it like a spotlight. Being with Jack was like stepping into another dimension, unpredictable, sexual, lawless. They'd disappear for days inside his Mulholland Drive home, emerging only when exhaustion overtook desire. Goldie said being around Jack felt like trying to ride a lightning bolt. But with Jack came chaos. He couldn't commit. He couldn't be tamed. He lived entirely for pleasure, for impulse, for the next thrill. Goldie realized quickly that Jack wasn't a man you built a life with. He was a man you survived. Yet before Jack, there was the first man who awakened her, Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty was Goldie Hawn's introduction to the irresistible power of male charisma. When they met in 1971, Beatty was already Hollywood's most infamous ladies' man. Brilliant, intense, manipulative, and intoxicating. But Goldie shocked him immediately. She didn't play along. Her honesty melted his defenses. Her independence intrigued him. Beatty, who was used to women falling at his feet, found himself chasing her, calling repeatedly, showing up unannounced, acting like a man who had finally met his match. Their 3-month affair was short but explosive. Goldie described it as a crash course in desire, the moment she realized her own power and her own hunger. Warren Beatty didn't just seduce her. He awakened her. In the end, Goldie Hawn's revelations weren't just a list of famous men she slept with. They were a roadmap of a woman discovering herself, piece by piece, desire by desire, heartbreak by heartbreak. Each man represented a different chapter, a different lesson, a different version of who she was becoming. Warren Beatty awakened her innocence and showed her the intoxicating power of attraction. Jack Nicholson ignited the wildfire inside her, proving passion can thrill and threaten at the same time. Ryan O'Neal dragged her into the kind of love that burns too hot to survive. Burt Reynolds liberated her, teaching her not to fear her own desires. Al Pacino forced her to confront emotional intensity deeper than lust. Don Johnson reminded her how dangerous beauty can be when mixed with recklessness. And Robert Redford, unexpected, elegant, deliberate, gave her a taste of intimacy that stayed with her long after it ended. Goldie never told these stories to shock. She told them because at 79, she no longer cared about Hollywood's polite lies. She lived boldly, loved fiercely, and made choices that shaped her spirit rather than her reputation. These 7 men didn't define her, but they helped her understand what she wanted, what she needed, and what she would never accept again. Her journey wasn't about scandal. It was about freedom. And that is the truth behind Goldie Hawn's legendary past. A woman who refused to apologize for desire, who embraced pleasure without shame, and who walked away from every man who couldn't handle her fire.